Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. It is middle of August and we are up north in Northern Ontario. Actually, we're getting back today. So if you're hearing this, it's because we recorded it before.
On July 31st.
Series and magic and wonder of technology.
Wow.
This is another episode for you. Today we're talking about Musky. Of course, we've got the wonderful, as always, Jordan Pockett. Otherwise, you might know him as the owner and the guide of Perfect Drift Guide Company here in Ontario. So we went out for a day musky fishing. Idis and me went out for a day musky fishing with him, and it was sick. So we're going to talk about that and just generally musky fly fishing.
So you want to go musky fly fishing?
Eh? Well, here you go. Here's your guide to. But before we get into that, my name is Mitch. We've got Aldo.
Hello, everybody.
And how's it going?
It's going well. It's like you said, it's July 31st, so we're on the cusp of August here. Where's the summer going?
I don't know.
Fuck. And yeah, me and you. But exciting times here, brother. Yeah. I got 2 weeks in the north.
Yeah,
coming up the way north. We're going back. We're going back to Hearst Air.
Brother. Yeah.
The place where it all started. No, not you.
But you are just coming off of it, so people might have seen stuff on social of it.
Yep.
But you up there with whomst is on that? It's you, Idis, David from Very Good Fly Fishing, and
that's right,
and Nick, Salmographer on Instagram.
That's right.
Who's come on trips before.
He's like our northern correspondent.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's freaking sick.
We just bring him north.
He's able to go on these and he's down. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a northern trip with Hearst Air flying into a remote lake.
Brunswick Lake Lodge. Yeah, which is caught somewhere between a full service lodge and a remote outpost camp, meaning that there are amenities like power and Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But you cook for yourself and you're relieving yourself in outhouses. So
right.
And the cabin that looks like very much like the cabin we stayed on Pim Island, which is very basic, but very comfortable. And really all you need when basically the sun doesn't set till 11, so all you're doing is fishing.
Yeah, I'm bummed I'm not going. You know how much I love the north.
Oh yeah, but then we're going to Old Post Lodge.
Old Post Lodge, yes, which is also very north, and that's a fly. Yeah, that's a fly
very
in as well.
North.
Yeah, and it's apparently got really cool histories and whatnot, so it's going to be a really fun trip that we are on right now, which is weird. But
yeah. Well, we'll keep this quick. Quick little community check in. August 17th, Friends of the Grand River have their event on the Grand River.
Yeah.
It's also the Fly Shop is doing it out there. A whole bunch of people like the Isaac Walton Club. They're all going to be. I know a lot of other fly tying clubs in Ontario are going to be there. It's just like a fun kind of drifted something similar earlier in the year on the Grand, and it was awesome. It was just like rod demos and tying demos and just a big community day on the Grand River, which is awesome. I think that's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, heck yeah. So that's August 17th?
That's correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then, of course, we always shout out the Ottawa Fly Fishers. If you go to ottawaflyfishers.ca, you can see their community calendar. They have not loaded their August events yet as of July 31st, but, go check them out. Maybe they're just fishing. It is the summer. And then if we're looking forward to September 14th, I'm just going to put a little bug in everybody's ear that is a volunteer day for Ontario Streams. If you guys want to go to OntarioStreams.ca, you can, see their volunteer days. And I think we'll be there at that one, and that'll be fun. I think we're doing some stream rehab, planting some trees to keep the water cooler, keep those brookies safe.
Heck yeah. Okay. And anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's it for the community check-in. I think looking forward to the fall, when everyone's kind of, not vacationing and not fishing constantly, that, things are going to
hunker down.
Things are going to ramp up again. At least I know we've got our eyes on a few little tasty nuggets for events.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I'm stoked. You guys looked like you had, a great day musky fishing with Jordan.
Fabulous.
You were just you texting me. You're like, oh my God, I was not expecting to see this many muskie, because you guys got like a bunch of follows. You landed one, Adis hooked one, like kind of sick, dude.
The river was on fi-fi. I mean, we did fish for like 12 hours, but there was lots of action, as Jordan will say later, like, there was periods of like nothing, but then, then all of a sudden there's a fish and it's big, it's really exciting. So super fun day on the water, and just nice being in Jordan's boat and hanging with Idis and just getting to enjoy summer. So yeah, it was awesome. But let's jump into that then. Why don't we hear from Jordan on fly fishing muskie and talk more about our day in the water? We've got Jordan Pockett here of the Perfect Drift Guide Company. Jordan, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for coming on. Although, what were you saying about Instagram handles?
Oh, I was just saying that the first time we had Jordan on the show, and if you look at our YouTube or whatever stuff that we've done with him in the past, of course you'll know Jordan as on the fly rod.
Yeah.
That's not to say he's not still on the fly rod, but of course since then he's purchased a Perfect Drift Guide Company, and you can also find all of his stuff there. And especially if you're trying to book Jordan, um, definitely you want to know that he's a Perfect Drift Guide Company, and which is really cool because I think the last time we had you on the show, you're talking about potentially purchasing the business and then moving your guiding into under that banner. So that actually happened, and which is really cool. And congratulations, and it's awesome to see your business growing, dude. It's so
Thank you.
cool, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been fantastic. It's been a whirlwind, and it's going on the fourth year now of everything. And even prior to taking over everything, I was working for Graham there with the business as well,
Yeah.
and then doing a little bit of side stuff as well. But yeah, I know it's been great, and over 250 days on the water every year,
Wow.
and even Graham's back guiding a little bit now too, and got
Cool.
some help from some other guys and whatnot. So it's been good. It's been great.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean, for people that maybe don't know, Jordan is guiding in Southern Ontario, and is a fantastic guide, an amazing angler, and crazy passionate about fishing, to like a whole other friggin' level of passion. And we saw that the other day, obviously, when we did one of our annual fishing days with you. I mean, last year,
Mhm.
Aldo and I just went bass fishing with you.
on
This
on
year,
opener, that was so fun.
on
Yeah.
opener, yeah, in June here in Ontario. And then this year, Idis and I went muskie fishing with you the other day. And it was so rad because you know a lot about muskie fishing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been something there that I've been doing for a couple of years now. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I've been really going heavy into it for a couple of years now, but been dabbling since I was younger and whatnot. I did a lot on Georgian Bay when I was younger too. When I spent even still do spend some time up there in the summers and whatnot on my boat. But it's they're not as daunting and as challenging as people may think. Especially where we are, we're very fortunate with the abundance of muskie that we have just in and around our area within, an hour to 3 hour drive from the city, Toronto.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It was actually something I was thinking about the other day. It was actually funny. A few friends of mine from the bar world, they're doing a trip in Temagami that normally I go with them and whatever, that doesn't matter. But they're doing a trip, and one of my friends, her husband was like, "Oh, he's all worried about the fish that are in the lake." I was like, "Why?" But I guess he has a bit of a phobia of fishing,
yeah.
sorry, of swimming in lakes. And she's like, "Are there any muskie?" I was like, "Well, actually, there aren't that many muskie in Temagami. In fact, I only know of one lake that has them in them." And then it got
Mhm.
me thinking, like, actually, you know what? That's a good question. What is the range for, like the native range? And then I started thinking, does Ontario have some of the best muskie access? Because like, if you put the Kawarthas in the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence and
Western
the
Ontario.
Trent Severn and
Well,
you know
and that's just it, right? Like the more easter you go, it really does get quite thick, whether it's lake or river system out there, and going north, east, west, south, it's all over. And even in the upper states, there's like Wisconsin and North Dakota and stuff like that, are some pretty big hot spots and whatnot. But we really do have some of the cream of the crop just right around our area, and especially for fly, because we get those options of lake and river. And I do find that that's very important, especially if you're trying to find that success on the fly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
why is that important? I mean, maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but yeah,
No, no, no,
what have
no.
you
I mean,
found that?
yeah, just to dive right into it. I mean, when it comes to musky fishing, one of the things that I'm trying to look for is concentration, right? Like, what's going to give you the best odds at the end of the day? Depending on the system that you're fishing or the body of water, these fish will only eat from anywhere from 1 week to a month apart from the last time that they ate. So it's not like, even when we're out fishing for these fish, if we move a fish one day, I don't expect to go out the second day or the next day after and move that same fish again. Right. It's
Okay.
just when that fish wants to eat is when that fish is going to eat. And the fish is going to let you know. There's things as an angler that you got to do to up your odds, but you're just trying to look for the best concentration of fish for that time and for the body of water that you're fishing, right? So whether it's a big body of water or a small body of water, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as you know where the odds are going to be in your favor as well.
And the thing with like conventional gear is you could seriously cover water, like very
Oh
easily.
my God.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
can rip casts like, hundreds of friggin' feet with these giant lures and get it in quick and just like, but with
yeah.
a fly, like, I mean, we saw this the other day because like, which we'll talk about, like the concentration of the place we were fishing was really cool. There was
Mhm.
quite a few fish, which made a huge difference because we are casting fly rods all day. It's tiring. Throwing these big flies. You could kind of go smaller when there's lots of fish around. I mean, that's
Mhm.
kind of what I was noticing. Like, it felt on a river quite different than what maybe a lake would be like. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would say with the river, especially the one that we were fishing, um, there's certain tactics that make that fishery successful that you would be different from a lake. You know what I mean? Like in a lake, just to throw, like in a lake, I'm probably throwing something this
Like a
or
giant
bigger.
T-bone.
I'm really not much smaller,
Yeah.
unless you're really kind of certain times of the year, like maybe early season or something like that. But even early season, I'm still gonna offer them something like this, where is in a river you can go down to something as small as like this little 5-inch yard sail,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's
So
a nice fly.
it's just, it gives you, it's not as tiresome at times,
Yeah.
but then there's also lakes, small lakes, shallow lakes, where you don't have to throw that monster stuff
Totally.
either, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in really really big bodies of water, or really really dark and tannic bodies of water, more so lakes as well, that's when the big stuff is really going to come into play. Just cause commotion, say, hey, here I am, and give them really something to look at too, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we go through like a day of musky fishing, how you'd approach it on, let's say, uh, a river for now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
go like sunny day, cloudy day, how you would
Mhm.
approach those two things, and
Mhm.
just kind of talk about the tips and tricks and techniques and all that jazz. But before,
Mhm.
Aldo,
Well, I was just gonna like maybe we can do a rapid fire in case people are trout bums and maybe they don't know as much. We can do a rapid fire on. I'll play the part of. Well, I am stupid, but I'll play the part of the stupid question. What is a
Mhm.
muskie?
yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, so muskie is a part of the Esox species, otherwise known as muskellunge. I mean, just easy way to say it is just it's a really large apex predator, very similar to what you would consider like a northern pike. It's just bigger, badder, nastier. Is really the simplest way to put it. Um,
It's so
it's
interesting. They're different, like metabolism. Like you're mentioning they
Yeah.
eat once a week, whereas I find pike, like at least in my experience, whether it be growing up in Ottawa, southern Quebec, or southern Ontario, northern
Mhm.
Ontario, it's like they don't stop eating. It seems
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that also has to do with like the range of meals that they're eating too, right?
Okay.
Especially depending on some of the rivers that you're fishing. If you get anywhere from like a 38 to 40 plus inch muskie eat a 20-inch salmon or steelhead in the river, it's probably going to do it for a while, as opposed to a bunch of 4-inch panfish. So the difference is a little bit there as well, and it's the same thing in the lake too, right? They're no strangers to eating large meals, and that's for sure.
I think that's what excites people about muskie is like we all like have seen or heard about the stories of them eating like actual ducks, or like
Yeah.
seeing the
Oh,
lures at Bass Pro Shops that are like the size of us, and it's like,
I've seen ducks get taken down before
yeah.
on lakes. Yeah,
Oh man.
Dude,
yeah,
I saw a duck get
Scary.
taken down on like the Jock River outside of Ottawa when I was fishing bass, and I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, no, it's definitely a because the duck was just like la la la." I was just like, "Whoosh." I was like, "Holy shit!"
yeah. Like the 14-inch T-bones, like it's a
Yeah,
kind of a fan favorite for a lot of the clients and even myself to throw, because you just want to know and see the fish that wants to eat
That wants
this,
to eat that. Yeah,
right? Like
that makes a lot of
that's kind
sense.
of the
Yeah.
appeal to that, right? You'll get a 50-inch muskie that still wants to take this, but whatever fish, whether it's in the mid 30s or plus, whatever, however big, The fish that wants to eat it's pretty fun and
That's
visual.
pretty exciting.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what muskie are. What are their range in Ontario, or just in general, if you know?
Yeah, I mean most of the central to eastern part of Canada, and same thing as the like the United States there as well. It's not a huge range, to be honest. They
Mm-hmm.
are quite condensed to kind of that area, and really aren't much on the western coast, to be honest. Little bits, and it's that's really it. It's why a lot of people even come from the States to cross the border up
Yeah.
into Canada, whether it be Ontario, Manitoba, to tackle these fish. They are very selective on where they're available.
Yeah.
Even then, like, New Brunswick and kind of like going down into the States to Maine, they do have some really good fishing out there. But I do find though that some of those, trophy 50-inch fish out there sometimes do suffer a little bit. They have really big fish, but you really want those concentrated, big fish. It really seems to be that kind of Ontario, Manitoba range.
Yeah, and you hear about them in like Wisconsin and
Yeah,
like
exactly.
maybe
Yeah, really good
Michigan.
spot there as well too.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's a really, really big one, and that's the most popular one for the what I find for the States,
Yeah.
and for the anglers down there. But even then, I still find some of them coming up here because they wanna
It's
chase that dream up here too, right?
they're everywhere in Ontario. Well,
Mhm.
there's like they're huge in Ottawa, like where we grew up fishing.
Yeah, that's what everybody. If you were getting a charter in Ottawa, it was probably for
Probably
muskie.
muskie. Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was not. I don't know how many guides were operating for just bass up
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I've had more experiences where like a muskie sideswiped something I've been like fishing or a lure than like a walleye, for instance. Like
Yeah.
I've had so many muskie bycatches in Ottawa. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like taking little red devils and like that story of the one just like cutting my line, swimming away. It was
Right.
a huge fish. I was
Right.
like, oh my God,
Yeah. Before I started targeting them, I caught more muskie on a 3.5-inch Mr. Twister tail than anything else, because like you said, bass fishing, walleye fishing,
Oh yeah.
because they're going to be around where those fish are congregating as well, right? What
Right.
a lot of people don't know is, I mean, pretty much almost all our bodies of water have muskie in them, and every single river in going into the Great Lakes has muskie going up them to feed or
Right.
to spawn, both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of if they show up or not. And then when you actually start targeting them, you realize that maybe there are more muskie in X watershed than you thought before, right?
Exactly.
So,
Right.
okay, big fish, big swath of area that they cover. They eat big things.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe now, what is like? How do you approach a day? A sunny day, a cloudy day.
Like what gear?
I was gonna
what
say the
gear?
gear. Honestly, more gear and mindset, I think, is honestly something that you really kind of have to wrap your head around. We have been talking a little bit about, these fish are easier to catch, than you think. And that can still very well be the case, but that still doesn't mean that these days are not grueling and that they're not a grind, right? And for even as many fish as we saw on the day that we did the other day, Mitch, you can see how grueling and tiresome it is, right? Especially to get that one fish that commits or connects to the fly. But before that, even I would say the gear is the biggest thing. If you do not have proper gear, do not go after these fish. Pike, even at their best of days, can cause some damage. They can slice your hands. They can put a hook into you, or whatever it is. And muskie just take that to the 10th degree. So, have your pliers, have your hook cutters, have even jaw spreaders. I don't love the jaw spreaders, but especially now you can get them with like rubber caps and stuff like that aren't, damaging the mouths of these fish too much. At the end of the day, you're still putting a 6-aught hook through them. So, you got to do what you got to do to get the hook out there as well. But, if the hook cutters are good as well, because not only if it's in you, if it takes it deep to the gills or anything like that, just cut the hook, leave it in there, and the fish should be hopefully okay. It's better than you doing that than ripping that, just trying to rip it through the gills and then just causing more damage that way. But the biggest thing is just having your gear to be able to be set up to encounter them. A net's a huge one as well. The bigger the net, the better. It's not just to be able to, handle a 50-inch fish, because that ultimately is the goal, but it's also just to have enough room for those fish to feel comfortable in the net. If they're going to feel confined or constricted in the net, that's when they're going to thrash. That's when they're going to start to freak out. And then that's when you get a hook to the thigh or to the hand, or, just getting a really nasty mess in the net that now just takes away, or a lot longer to handle.
tougher release as well, right? Like if they're working harder, they're building up more lactic acid, which is like I think a
And that's a
common
lot of
thing.
thing. Yeah, these fish, unlike any other fish, I don't care what fish it is. They fight to a certain point, and then at a certain point, you can pretty much kind of lay them on their side, and they'll come in. And to a point, a muskie will do that to us to a little bit as well. But these fish do fight to the death, right to the end. And to your point as well, with that lactic acid buildup, for as ferocious as they are, they're incredibly fragile. You need to be quick. You need to keep them in the water. The biggest thing too is I see a lot of people, still holding them underneath the gill plate for photos. The only time you should ever put your hand underneath that gill plate is really just to get a hook out. Keeping that fish in the net where still 90% of its body weight suspended in the water, and you're literally almost just grabbing the head to kind of pull it towards you a little bit, just so you can kind of look in the throat and pull that hook out. Otherwise, one hand on the tail, one hand under the pec fin on the belly, and that's the way to do it. I still see a lot of the gill plate, grips and all that, and it's just, even with pike, like it puts unnecessary pressure on those fish. Under the belly and on the tail is a way better hold, and just a quick photo.
It does feel like
that
that is like it's kind of like old, It's like there really is no reason to use like the fish's like gill plate to like help hold the thing. Like probably don't rely on like the biology of the fish to hold it. You know what I mean? Like just belly, tail, keep it in the water, whatever.
Well,
definitely don't bear hug the thing.
Well, there's something we can get better at on our upcoming pike trips.
Yeah, well, sure, I mean, and it's just like the glove back in the day too, right? It's just something that everyone did, and unless you kind of know or evolve, and it's going to stay the same. But
we must evolve.
Yeah,
Mitch, we have to evolve.
A lot of people think that just going under the gills too is better control of the fish, but you have not just teeth but gill rakers in these fish that, when you get your hand in there, one little thrash and you can have a disaster in your hands. Right, whereas the fish is going to actually be a lot calmer going underneath its pec fins. And it doesn't matter what fish it is, every single fish out there, if you take your hand and get it underneath the pec fins, but then just slide it up a little bit, so it's almost as if you're pushing your arms kind of out to the side. You don't want to be pushing them past. You don't want to be going forward, but just kind of snugging your hand up towards those pec fins, and it just calms the fish right down.
Just gotta rub its belly.
Best spot for support on any fish, not just muskie.
So gear then is about safety for yourself, better catch and release practices, because that's obviously what we're all into, and keeping these fish, because if we do want to have fun, target them, nobody's eating them. I don't think you can. Like, no, I mean, I wouldn't even allowed, right?
I'm sure somebody has or does, but
so it's like, it's not a matter of that. This is purely for the fun sport of it. So it's like, do whatever you can to not friggin' hurt the animal, So heavy. So what kind of rods, what weights are we talking? What kind of lines are we talking? What's the leader setup?
So, I mean, when it comes to lines, that's kind of a whole talk in its own, just kind of depending on water that you're fishing. But for rods, I like an 11 weight. You see a lot of people trying to use 10s, and that's okay. Depending if you don't have massive fish, if you don't have a large number of 40-inch fish plus fish in your system, then there's nothing wrong with the 10 weight. But I really do prefer the 11. It's just got so much more backbone. You can really control those fish a lot more. I find a lot of people underestimate these fish and their power. And you asked Atis, he felt it the other day, right? Even for a guy as large as him, you can't stop them. And especially if they get themselves upright. So the 11 weight I find is a must. Everyone always is kind of talking about, or I hear a lot of talk about 8 foot 10 weights, 8 foot 10 inch rods, kind of like those boat style rods. But when it comes to musky fishing, especially when you're getting that boat side action, 9 foot minimum. You can even go as far, like there's even like 9'4", 9 foot 10 or 10 inch rods. You have, I think 10 foot is a little bit long at that point, but anything from like that 9 to the upper
how come
range. It just gives you a little bit more control and that distance in the boat too. If you're in a lake and you're fishing more on, like on a Lund or a deep hull boat or something like that, you do have the luxury of being right up to the hull and having a little bit more room to kind of reach over over the boat. But in the drift boat, or in the river, when you got either whether it's a high side clacka or any sort of like raft or pontoon style, you do kind of have to reach over the tube a little bit and get that rod tip deep. So I really find pulling that rod anything less than 9 foot does kind of hinder yourself. For sure.
And that's especially because of the figure 8 presentation thing, which we'll talk about in a sec, right?
Yeah.
Like the actual presentation. Okay, before we talk about that, what kind of leaders are we talking about?
Yeah, so you have two options. You can run a straight 100-pound fluoro, to be honest, but I do like a 60 to 50-pound fluoro butt with a 40-pound wire bite. For conventional fishing, you can use the 150-pound fluoro with the 9-foot heavy action rod, and it's a legit broomstick, and you can lock the drag up, and you can pretty much hold that fish there to a certain extent. With the fly, even with 100-pound fluoro, your fly line still only has about a 40-pound max breaking strength. So, if you're using anything past that, you're just going to run the risk of damaging your fly lines. So I'll use those, I usually like to use a 50-pound fluoro to a 40-pound butt section, and you're going to be playing these fish a little bit more. You still shouldn't be playing them a crazy amount of time, because you still are using like 40-pound wire bite. I mean, that's pretty hard to cut through, to be honest. And same thing with the fluoro as well, right? So you have about, especially with that leader, and as we saw the other day, you have about a 10 to 20, maybe 30-second window at most, to get that fish boat side, especially if it eats kind of more boat side or closer to the boat. You have a very, very small window to try and maybe get that fish in the net. But as soon as that fish kind of uprights itself and gains its bearings, it's going to take off like an absolute rocket, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it on a fly rod. You're going to have to let it go for a run or two at least, or whatever it wants before you're able to really kind of torque it in. So, 40-pound knotable wire is really all I'm using. Not like a size 4 fly clip as well for quick change flies and stuff like that. As you've seen here, the other day, you get follows, you can bring fish back. You can get them to interact again. You can go back with the same fly. I'm a big fan of changing flies too, especially if you're fishing rivers with more pressure and stuff like that. So having something that, you can quickly change out flies, but then still also being able to handle these big fish and strikes. So size 4 fly clip, 40-pound wire bite, 50 to 60-pound fluoro butt, is pretty much what I'm using.
Yeah. Sick. And then, as you said, the line is more about what kind of water body you're fishing, whether it's sinking or floating.
Yeah, but that's also really important too, right? Yep. To name drop, I mean, Scientific Angler 3D Sonar Titan lines, they're pretty hard to beat, not just for durability, but performance as well. Especially for a lake, it's the only line I'm going to use. What it has is it has a controlled sink depth ratio. So when you cast your fly out and you let it sink, your fly stays at that depth all the way to the boat with how the sink tip is integrated, as opposed to more of like a sink tip line, or even just other sink tip lines in the past where it's all top heavy. And as you retrieve, your fly now comes up to the surface and straight across the top towards the boat. So those sonar lines, they're really, really good as well for keeping the fly deep as you start the figure 8 as well. Keeping that fish a little bit lower than the surface of the water is, might help you convert some of those follows and those boat side reactions as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we've got our gear ready. We've got our rods and everything else. I'm with you on like the heavier rods. I feel like that's kind of how I feel like with every fish, because it's just like I don't want to kill fish, and I don't even like. And this is me. This may be a me thing. I don't even have that much fun with the fight necessarily. Like I feel bad. So it's like I want to be able to horse this thing in 11 weight. These fish were huge, brother. Like. Man, give me a 15 weight. You know what I mean? I'll just pick it up, take the hook out, put it back. So yeah, I feel you there. And then the big flies.
What do you think about, just before we just what do you think about, kind of like the Sage makes a specialty, or they used to anyway, with like the longer, the super long butt handle for your figure eighting. Are you into those kind of like, I don't want to use the word gimmicky rods, but like maybe hyper specialty
Oh, I
rods.
don't. Yeah, I don't think they're gimmicky at all, to be honest.
Okay, well that's cool.
I feel like that would be super
There's definitely certain rods out there that are for other species, companies, whatever. Like there are gimmicky rods out there for sure.
Yeah.
But with the two hand setups, it's not even really honestly so much for like the boat side work with like circles or figure eights. It's honestly for two hand casting.
Right, just for the balance.
Those, especially if you're planning on throwing flies up to 15 inches, a two hand rod is going to be your best friend.
Oh my God.
Or especially on a lake too, just casting through wind, being able to keep a lot, your line in control off a certain shoulder. If you're forced to fish a certain style or way, or, in a certain direction, those two hand rods are really gonna come into play and be a factor.
Like trout spay is a thing. Why? Like we need some musky spay rods, man.
Just water loading of fucking.
Well, so there, it's like a two hand overcast is what it is. Yeah, it's not really quite like roll casting and stuff like that. But no, they like the Echo Musky rod is a really really good bang for your buck. The Reddington Predator is honestly what I primarily use and put in clients' hands. They have an 11-way musky rod. I just picked one up. It's good. The two hand section on it isn't the biggest. Which isn't honestly too big of a deal because as a rod that's going to be river and lake compatible for me, I like that kind of all around, all purpose feel that rod has. If you are going to be designated to a lake, having an 11, maybe even an 11 and a half big hardy two hand is gonna do the trick. And there's a lot of options out there. Even the miser rods are really 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 nice.
Yeah, I think Sage now has they've converted them all into they just call them the payload, but
the payloads are fantastic as well too.
But they used to have just they're kind of like warm water predator series of rods, and one was called the Musky, one was called the Pike, one was called the Bass. It was pretty awesome. I loved that Sage Musky rod. I got a demo one once. It was pretty, and it had the the extended butt.
That sounds sick.
Yeah.
There was one day, the only day I went fishing with Rob and Chris from Drift. This was this was 2017 that we went for musky.
I remember these rods.
And we ended up getting one, which was great. It wasn't a huge one, but yeah, I was using that rod all day and I really liked it.
These rods were
good though. I've demoed the payload.
Oh yeah.
And obviously we use Predators constantly. It's probably the rod I use the most.
For bang for your buck, you can't really beat it as the name is right there, as a Predator rod, for pike and musky. Especially for in Ontario, it's a really really good one, and it really does the job on the lake. And something that I really like about the Predator is it actually isn't too stiff. It has a little bit of flex and forgiveness, especially for the leaders that we're throwing. It's not like these massive 150 crimped together fluoro gear leaders. Right. So having a little bit more forgiveness in the rod, not just for fighting fish, but, forgiveness while casting throughout the day. Really, really, really big benefit as well. Yeah. It just, with the price point, it's going to be a little bit heavier than some of those higher end rods. But for price point, it's not really going to be be too worrisome.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so why don't we talk now about getting onto the water, what you're looking for, and then the presentation.
Yeah. So depending on what time of year it is really what you're kind of looking for. If you're looking early season, depending on where you're fishing, June is going to be the month and when it opens. Post spawn, so check out, especially if you're going to be in a lake, check out your river mouths, shallow water weed beds, shallow shoals, even rocky bottom can sometimes hold them too, and stuff like that. Your shallow structure, as you move into the summer, they're going to start to drop deeper, and into the fall, and then they might start coming back up as you get to the end of the season. And even into the fall, even though they might start coming back up again, they're going to start to get lazy. So the mindset there can still be something to kind of be played around with too. And that will also kind of more so come into fly selection also for time of year. In the fall, I do tend to like something more of a jigging action, whereas early season, I really want to push a lot of water, have more of like a glide or a jerk, really big jackknife kind of motion.
They're a little shallower. How deep are they typically July, August, let's say in a lake?
I mean, it all depends, I've accidentally caught muskie in 70, 80 feet of water while downrigging in August for salmon, so they can be way down low. And then I've also seen them in middle of August on a 10-foot rocky shoal. So, big fish are going to be where big fish want to sit. I kind of, that's kind of a thing that me and my buddies kind of always say to ourselves. Big fish are going to be wherever they want to be, and nobody knows where that fish wants to be except for that fish, right? There's obviously hot spots and things that you can look for, but the more time you spend on the water, the more you're just going to also understand that anything is a possibility, and they really could be anywhere, right?
Especially those huge fish, they just have such a area within bodies of water because they're such a presence, like they're not
Well,
sitting in like
mhm,
2 feet of water all the time behind a rock like a trout, never, and that's their life. Like
mhm,
I feel like they
mhm.
they swim around a bit, no?
Well, and they're kind of almost like they're a nomadic fish, right? So they're
Right.
they're constantly cruising, especially in the lakes. They're always looking around. As you start to get familiar with your fish, you can start to pattern, routes that they travel and stuff like that. Especially if it's not a large, body of water that you're fishing, and it's a bit more of an intimate fishery. You can start to kind of track and pattern those things: fish movement, fish behavior, what shoals do specific fish sit on, or the log or fallen trees that they hide under, and whatnot. And especially if you're in a river too, they still are nomadic. They're still going to cover a certain section, right? When we, like we were saying the other day, where the other day we were starting to see fish for a second time that we've moved earlier on in the season, right? And it might not be off the same log or the same rock point or the same weed line or whatnot. They could be 100 feet down or whatever it is, but they're still kind of cruising that general area. So they do somewhat have their homes and their spots that they like to be. And like I was saying, kind of early season, start shallow, and then work your way down. And then in the fall, start deep and work your way shallow throughout your day too, right?
Mm.
For whatever reason, you could just have certain days where the fish just want to do different things. So for the certain time of year, start, with what is best for that time of year. And then if it just doesn't see success throughout the day, then just, pull a 180. And that's not something that I do for just muskie, that's something that I do for all my guiding, for all species, right? At the end of the day, they're fish and they can be patterned, except unless it's an Atlantic salmon, but that's a different talk. Um, but it they have patterns, they have habits, and start with what and if it doesn't prove to be beneficial, then just start doing some wacky stuff, do a bit of 180, kind of go against the grain kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. So the figure eight thing, like we were doing, I didn't realize you did it every time, but you had us doing it every time because you never know when the fish is going to show up. Maybe this is specific to like the place we were fishing.
No, it's
That's
I would
every
say
time.
it's for sure pretty much wherever you want to go. And you don't have to waste the time with doing like two or three big figure eights or whatnot. The biggest thing that I really find is that with every retrieve, at least just drag it along the side of the boat, what almost
Yeah,
like as in a J, right? So you cast it out to the bank, you retrieve it back, and then just kind of drag it to whichever
totally.
side you feel is best,
Yeah.
right? And the biggest thing is a wide turn too. So let's just say you're completely perpendicular to the bank and you cast it a little bit more to the left and you're coming in on a 45-degree angle. I'm going to drag that up along the right side of the boat where it's, kind of on a more open faced angle, as opposed to cutting back really aggressively, casting to the left and dragging it to the left. It's just going to be a really sharp turn.
So that's
So,
to have a nice, smooth, consistent thing
and
because the
smoothness is the
fish.
key too. There
Yeah,
will be
totally.
times where you can get erratic with it, and that's kind of more again like patterning your fish to a daytime mood.
Yeah.
So there was one day last year as well where most of the time where I'm, if I see a follow or if I'm just kind of dragging it by the boat, I'll almost kind of extend my arm out, and as I get right up close, where in that last little strip, as soon as I give it that last strip and I feel that little, tick, tick, tick of that fly line and that fluoro leader come through, as soon as I feel that come through off of one big strip, I know that I'm right where I need to be, where I'm probably only about 20 inches away from my fly, because that's really all you're using for wire bite too. 12 to 20 inches is at most. Even 20 inches can sometimes be a little long,
All right.
especially for how close you want to be for that control, especially in the drift boat if we're on a river, like we were the other day. So bringing it right up, and as soon as you get that strip in, my my casting arm is immediately off that reach. I'm immediately dragging it through the water. So it's a really nice, smooth transition into this big circle. I prefer the circle than the figure eight. It gives them a lot more room to turn, especially with the 50-inch fish that we've seen this year. It takes a lot for a 50-inch fish to turn pretty quickly, especially if there's current around too. So I much prefer the circle as opposed to the eights. But being really smooth is really important. There was one day last year, it was about like the eighth fish of the day. We had already hooked up to a couple, lost a couple, and we were still just kind of deprived of one in the net. And it was right at the last kind of couple bends of the day. We're coming down, and we get this fish. And I told my clients too, like right before as well, I was like, we've been smooth on the transition all day. What I want you to do is I want you just to give it this massive, massive strip, like almost just like this massive jerk and this pump throughout the water and just kill it. So like I was saying before, like, you have the standard practices that you're going to do, but if it ain't working, just pull a 180, just do the complete opposite. Right. So instead of having that smooth transition, we give it this big pop and just let it sit and die. And this 42-inch fish comes gill flared and just the whole fly is gone.
Oh man, sick.
So,
yeah. I mean, I noticed that too. Like, go ahead.
No, please. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say like that consistent motion is so important because what blew my mind, and I was thinking about this yesterday, was the first follow that I had the other day when we were on the boat. So, we were fishing, like I'd never really fly fish musky before. You were like, this is how you do it. Strip in, big circle at the boat. Like you want your fly basically like 6 inches off the rod tip at that point, maybe a little bit more, just so that it's super close. You have lots of control. You're doing a big loop. So we were doing that. And then I had a follow, like from a big fish, like a decent sized fish, right?
Yeah, it was upper 30s, kind of getting into the 40 range. Yeah.
I was like, holy Moses. Okay, here we go. And as I got to the boat, I was doing the loop and it was following and it was going with it. I'm like, this thing's going to eat. And then I messed up the loop and I kind of did a sharp turn, which stopped the fly for like a millisecond.
Yeah.
As soon as it stopped, the fish is just like, nope, and just left.
Yeah.
Like a hair of a second. It didn't make much sense when you think about other fish patterns, but with a muskie, it was like keyed in on this fly and it was like mesmerized by it. And as soon as it did something like even like a hair different, it was like, nope, and just swam off.
And it can be completely the other way too, right? It could be a hair difference and that fish is coming gill flared, lunging forward too, right? And it's really cool when you get to convert those. But and that's kind of the whole point of why you want to bring the fly right up to the rod tip too, because the longer the fly is away when you make that turn and that rod tip is now, like if your fly's here and your rod tip's here and it starts to cut back, there's now going to be this slack in your line, which is going to kill the motion of your fly, and you don't realize it too.
It changed everything. Like that motion really makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Obviously. But yeah.
So you're going through your day. You've got, Addison, Mitch in the boat. Obviously we fish for pike a lot. But is it like Mitch, were you finding you had to like kind of turn off that part of your brain? Because like for us, Jordan, I don't know, obviously you can chime in too, but like stopping the fly is such a big part of my presentation when I'm pike fishing, I find. I'm like, it's got to stop at some point, and
the pause is everything.
The pause is everything, and like whether like you're, whether it's a hand over hand quick retrieve, whether it's a slow jerk retrieve, whatever you're doing, I'm like, you stop that fly. Usually 90% of my eats are on the stop, and yeah.
Well, I think like what I found in my one day, and Jordan, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, but in my one day of musky fishing, what I took away was the unpredictability of musky, because there was a moment where I did have a fish do it might have been a pike. We think it was a muskie. I think it was.
The one off like the little tree, the quick one that came out. I think it was a small muskie.
I think it was a small muskie, and it did like a thing where my fly stopped, and it was like, shoo, like how like sometimes pike will like side swipe really quick, like shoo, like a bullet through the water. Did one of those. So I think like, but then the other fish, all liked consistent movement, and if it stopped, they were like, nah. So I feel like muskie are just more unpredictable, whereas pike, pretty much like it's pretty clear how to get them to eat most of the time,
So to answer the question really is you just got two different kinds of fish, right?
You got two different kinds
species, of musky. So like especially as you get into the fall or as the temps start cooling, you can pause the fly more on the retrieve. And And when you're working a fly too, as opposed to, like a spinner blade on gear or something like that,
Yep.
you're going to want to have a little bit of a pause just to be able to work the fly in itself, right? To get that jerk, to get that jackknife
That motion.
or that glide or that jig or whatever it is. So there will be a little bit of a pause there. And as you get colder into the year, you can give it the pause too. And for that reason there, with that fish that we've seen there, Mitch, it was also off like a little bit of structure where I can't remember quite correctly, but I think we were just letting the fly sink a little bit, just to get down. Because on a lot of those fallen trees, I might just let it sit for a second or two just so it can kind of get into that vision of those fish that are kind of lurking underneath there too. And that's where, like, the more that you musky fish as well, you'll have fish of all shapes and sizes, almost to that unpredictability that you were talking about. I should more like attitudes, I should say. There's fish that hit it the second it hits the water. They're right up tight to the bank or to a shoreline or whatever it is. And the second the fly lands, it's almost as if they're tracking it through the air. They pick up on it. And then you get those fish that are, a couple strips in. Those are the ones that you really want, either right away or a couple strips in, because those are hungry fish. They're not giving you any other chance, right? A lot of these following fish are, curious fish. It's curiosity.
Yeah.
They're looking to eat, but they're probably not ready. Sometimes it could just be as simple as get out of my face. I don't like you here.
Right.
There's been times, whether it's on a river
Yeah,
or a lake, where I bring the boat over a spot and you hear a big thrash behind you and you look back and there's this big ring in the water 50 feet behind, and you make one cast and there's your fish.
Right.
So there are times where, whether it's, follows or whatnot, where they're just saying, get out of here, get out of my face. They're curious. So and also with the boat side work, with the movement, you don't really have a whole lot of room to give it kind of jerks and pauses. You can, depending on the flies that you're using, or the rod that you're using. But if you got a bit of a softer tip, I find it's hard to kind of jerk that fly at the boat side. I really do find, especially if it's coming in, like when you get a boat side, if you get just a fish that kind of just raises and then lowers in the water, that's just a curious fish. He's just checking it out. You can waste your time and try and get that fish to come back. But if it doesn't have intent behind it, it's probably just curious and it's not going to eat. But then you'll get fish that we've seen like the other day where they're followers, but they have more intent. They're coming in hot. They might even give you a second look and they follow it a lot more. And that's where that speed comes into factor. It's kind of a cat and mouse game, right? When you're casting out and you're stripping and retrieving in, and you get that, mid column, mid retrieve eat, that's just a fish on the prowess that's just really, really hungry. That's just going to grab it. But when you get that boat side work, it becomes that cat and mouse game. And the more you pull it away from that fish, the more it's like, no, you're coming to me and I'm going to get you. And they really don't like it. They don't like to be deprived of the meals that they wait so long and work so hard for as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they're really they're really hunting for those meals.
Mm-hmm.
If they are, like you're suggesting, a nomadic kind of fish.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I really want to eat that. That's really cool. That's so interesting. It's like when you eat an extra large pizza, Mitch, and I wave a piece of cheesecake in front of your face. You don't eat every time.
Not every time.
You are curious.
Yeah, depends on the day. I'm definitely curious.
You're definitely curious.
Bro,
and if that thing starts moving away really fast, I'm fucking after.
It can't be too fast.
Yeah.
And you can't stop.
I just have to know it's like the opportunity's leaving, so I need to take it now.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's like the ideal conditions you're after?
Yeah, I was actually my next question was like, is there a temperature range where you're finding them that they're a little bit more active, or is there a temperature range where like, oh, we shouldn't be fishing for these, it's not ethical anymore, kind of thing?
Or light conditions?
Yeah, like I find like lakes, especially in the summer, shallow areas, you can get lake temps as high as 80 degrees sometimes. So if you're fishing things up in like the upper 70s and the 80s, you probably shouldn't be fishing for these fish.
Yeah.
It's not just like the fighting and the lack of oxygen that they might have in some of these spots, but it's really just recovery too, right? They don't have any other predators to worry about, so getting like their health back and now being sacrificial thing for something else. It's not anything like that, but it really is just as something as them trying to cool themselves down, regain their strength, clear that lactic acid from their body, and get kind of back to business too. So most, if you're tackling rivers, more often than not, your rivers are going to be pretty much okay all year round, even on some of the larger ones in the eastern part of our province. Like there's some really, really, really good musky fisheries out there. Some would almost consider the capital of our province. So, especially, I would definitely say more so in the lakes. You're going to be watching temps. The month of August is really the one that people kind of watch out for, to be honest. And it all depends on the body of water too, right? If you have, deep access to water and all that stuff, and cooler temps and conditions, especially the further up north you go, you can fish them all through the summer if that's the desire. But my favorite times are early season and fall. The month of September is a really, really underrated one, especially for in the lakes. Everyone talks about, getting into like October, November, December for their musky fishing. But I find September is a really, really nice month for still having aggressiveness and still them wanting to pack on that winter weight. As you get kind of into that October, November, they do get sluggish. And I find the fights also aren't quite as fun.
Yeah.
So.
Why do people like them then in the fall? Is it just because the changeover, big fish come in more shallow?
Yeah, it really seems to be kind of be the big fish month. Yeah. Big baits, big fish, big flies. That's kind of the method to the madness there. That's pretty much it. And also, you can almost kind of consider it almost like some reason why people like steelheading too, right? You guys know Justin, my good buddy Justin Hartunian. He almost loves steelheading for just the fact of embracing conditions, right? You're standing out there swinging a run in a whether it's a blizzard or a nice sunny day, you never know what you're going to get. And it's up to the angler to not just deal with conditions for weather wise, but also for fish too. So there's also that added bonus that some people like to it as well, right? Lack of
just the
pressure.
Fall in general. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fall's really nice too, right? Like, we didn't even have that hot condition out the other day, and it can get pretty hot. Like we were swimming in the river and all this stuff, trying to stay cool and whatnot. I think it was only like 25 to 28 degrees Celsius for the day for like a high. It wasn't even that bad.
Yeah, you guys got a lot of sun though, that's for sure. It looked like some big sunny day.
Yeah. And to your point too, though, right? Like, what are you looking for? Kind of cloudy day, sunny day. I mean, everyone always goes for the cloudy, overcast days, and they try and stay away from the sunny days. You ain't going to catch fish on the couch. And there's only one way to do it, and it's to get out on the water, regardless of the conditions. Most people don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, it's good conditions today, I'm going fishing. So you want to catch that fish, you're going to have to just go no matter what it is, right? The only thing that I'd really, worry about is in your rivers, if you got that heavy stain or rising rivers and stuff like that for massive blowouts, it's probably going to be a tough one. And also just, safety aspect too, depending on the rivers and how volatile they can be at times. But, I've had incredible days, when it's 30 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, and I've had tough days when it's overcast and cloudy and you think it's going to be a great day. Right. So, definitely I would say your overcast days are probably going to be, more favorable more often than not. Same thing, with trout and, most of your other species as well. But the only way to catch them is to get out there too. Right. So I wouldn't really honestly worry too much about, about your daytime conditions. Obviously, play to the conditions that you have though. Right.
So if it's bright.
Yeah. Like if you get sun, fish your structure. Right. High sun, fish logs, rock or whatever, anything that, deep holes too, anything that they can hide in or anything like that. If it's overcast, they might come up onto some shoals or some rocky points and stuff like that. If you're in a river too on overcast days, I do find that they might come into the current a little bit more. Instead of kind of being hidden away, they kind of have that more ability to roam, and you can kind of get them anywhere. Even in some of those deeper, heavier current spots, especially in a river, if they're going to be, preying on things like salmon and steelhead in our rivers, or even just some of the bass or walleye that we have in our rivers, and even pike, things like that. The bass is a big one. Every single river in Ontario pretty much has bass living in it. And it's a really big food source for them in the river. and the bass will be feeding on current seams and stuff like that down in the deeper holes. And on those overcast days, you'll get muskie coming into more of those faster current spots, feeding on that meal.
God, being a bass getting eaten by a muskie would be the most terrifying way to go. Oh my God, those fish are scary, man. Like seeing it follow my fly, I was like, they're so crazy looking from the top, like even scarier than pike, like, but by quite a bit. But
Yeah.
So what's like one of your favorite like best muskie stories you got? Just like
Um,
one of those catches that you're just like, geez, Louise, sticks with you.
Yeah, I think it was. I kind of almost touched on it earlier today about that one where it was kind of a grinding day. We had seen fish too. We seen some really big fish. Like we had this big 45-inch fish follow to the boat early in the morning, and just kind of give us a good look and took off. We couldn't get it to come back. We all the way through the day. We came across a lot of these mid to upper 30-inch fish, and there's just a lot of trout sets, a little lack of boat side work and stuff like that. And even some of the fish, you do everything right, and it just fish is going to do what the fish wants to do. Right. So yeah, it was just one of those things where, we're coming down this river. It was just a very magical night. It was working really hard. We did a bit of a later day. It was about 7 o'clock in the evening. Sun's kind of going down. And it's just, there's no wind, the birds are chirping, this, pressure is like the pressure system's beautiful. No clouds, everything, right? You almost get this kind of like glow from the sunset and everything. And it's just one of those things where, after kind of almost being beaten up by the muskie, you're okay with it. You've had action, it's muskie fishing. The clients and everyone are pretty just satisfied and the work that they've done, because that's a big thing. When it comes to musky fishing, emotions run high, and they can drive you crazy.
Right.
And it's about taking the little things for appreciation during the day, because if you're just only putting it up for the fish, I mean, I understand that that's the big prize and that's the ultimate goal. But if you're not taking in all those little things along the way, the days get long and they get tough. And there's been times where, you're just sitting and staring around at the boat with your fly in the water and taking in the scenery, and we have these fish come up and just eat it after putting hours and hours of work in. And we were just coming kind of down and around this bend, and we can hear these two girls playing some like Bob Dylan, Tom Petty on this acoustic guitar, and it was very like peaceful, right? Almost out of a movie. And we're just kind of just taking it all in, just kind of almost wrapping up the day, right? It's just, oh man, what a good day. We don't think it could get any better. And then all of a sudden it's just fish and boom. And it was this big, 42-inch muskie, big boat side eat, just complete commotion everywhere. Client did really, really well, keeping it pinned, boat side, had it in the net for about 30 seconds later. But it was awesome. Biggest muskie. It was a personal best as well for the angler.
Nice.
And so just having everything come full circle. And as again, like I said, kind of taking in the little things, right? They're still working. It wasn't quite just having, the fly sit by the side of the boat. It was still a cast. It was still a retrieve. And the big thing too was that, it was as soon as they said fish, it was at the exact same moment that they gave that pump in the fly, kind of changing everything that we did, so it was just really, really good, to see, the change in direction too, right? The execution from the client too, right?
Perfect,
it's something that, especially, after seeing a few fish throughout that day too, you kind of get the jitters and the nerves, especially earlier on in the day, you give a command or you give a direction for something for when the moment happens, and it's freeze, they just freeze up, they tense up, the fly goes dead, and that could be it. So it's just really everything kind of coming full circle, just keep grinding it out. Beautiful weather, beautiful scenery, from the most peaceful moment to the most chaotic moment, boat side eat, changing all the, patterns and things that we're doing as anglers to get that fish to commit. So it was just a really, really cool, moment where just every single little aspect kind of just all came together.
Sick. Love it.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, just because we are getting close to an hour.
Yeah.
And I wanted, I wasn't there. I want to ask a few questions about your day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, fire away.
I know you didn't. I know you guys didn't. Well, Mitch, you landed one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's cool. So anyway, it sounded like you guys, we were, Mitch and I were texting. I was like, oh, how'd the day go? And it was like, I think I texted you that around 8:30 or 9, and you're like, we're still out here. I was like, damn. I was like, these
Yeah.
guys are like, you guys put in a
Yeah, we
long
fished
day.
long.
So
Yeah.
yeah, how'd it go? Like, like
Sick.
it looked like you guys had such a fun time.
Super
And you guys
fun.
were getting follows and stuff. And
Yeah, it was super fun. Yeah, there was, like I said, I was surprised by the amount of fish that we saw. You know, you always hear about muskie as like, oh, the 10,000 cast. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, like, and it was 10,000 cast, but like it's also like we were seeing action, we were having follows, and a lot of it came down to, like, when we'd beef, like mess up on a retrieve or something and we'd lose a follow or something. But yeah, like I landed a little guy, which was cool still. I just almost landed a really nice fish towards the end of the day. It was that kind of buzzer beater fish. It was getting dark.
yeah, I got
It was so close.
surprising little amount of text about elaborating on that story. So maybe Jordan, you want to walk me through that part of
Oh
it?
yeah, yeah,
Get the guide's perspective.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like, even just like right from the get go, Mitch and Adis. I mean, really, but I mean, both of them, and it's nothing to be expected, or nothing to be surprised about. Sorry. They did great casting, retrieving, staying committed all day. Like, that's the biggest thing. And, and that was there right from the start. There's kind of blimps in the day, and I almost like to break my day up, into like quarters or thirds. And if we can see a fish for every quarter or every third of the day, we're doing pretty good, whether it's a follow or an eat or, boat side action that we mess up or whatever it is. And that's kind of the pace that we were working at. We were kind of seeing a fish every quarter. And I think at the end of it, we seen 5 fish and landed the one small one, tightened up on another one, and lost the low 40s of Adis. So yeah, it was a fat fish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you gotta. It was a really, really nice fish. And but yeah, no, it's just one of those things where we went and we worked all day. There's times where you might, we were getting kind of like 2-3 hour blimps of no action, and it's crazy, especially when you're like 7 hours into a day. Even after seeing some fish, you go another 3 hours without seeing it. Even one little follow can just perk you right back up when it comes to musky fishing. And I kind of find, like, for me as even a guide, like, that can, put me right back into a mood. Like, all right, here we go. We're on them. And yeah, that's how it was. We went all the way down through the day, and almost very similar to kind of the story, like I was just saying, right? We're coming down to the end, and we had worked some other fish too. We had a couple of other fish that we were playing with and got them to come back a second time. So we had kind of held ourselves up a little bit back by working those fish. So we were kind of racing the daylight and running out of time. And I say it all the time to clients or buddies or, whoever is out with me on the boat, is just don't stop. As long as one person's in the water, we have a chance. And sure enough, Adis was just bombing them 45 back of the boat towards the bank. And he's just fish right there, right? He just screams fish, and it's on. I think it was only about a 30-second fight, and it was really, really close. It was, I think he was either stepping on the line or the line got wrapped up on. I got some red pegs on my boat that are really like the only line trap there, or the big line trap, and it came tight on either his foot or the peg, and it broke off. Unfortunately, it just came tight and barred it off, and it snapped. But he did really, really well. Like, he was doing everything right. He kept it pinned. We almost even had our chance to kind of land it there in that 30-second time range. He had it close. The fish was only about, I think, like 2-3 feet from the net. He kind of had the head up too, and the fish just wasn't letting him pull it to the net. And that's right when the fish righted himself. And I think Mitch got it on video there. You can just hear this thing take off. Just the amount of water that they push when they're able to right themselves and take that first run is just insane.
And you can see that fight on our YouTube soon. So yeah, go there. If it's not there yet, it'll be there soon under the day tripping section. Because yeah, it's like he loses the fish, and then the GoPro just like switches to you, Jordan, and Idis, and just like.
And that's musky fishing though, right?
And then
like,
I'm such a dick.
So long and so hard. And
I'm such a dick. It's like silence. I'm like, oh, that was a nice fish. And I just like, I know, like, fuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, no shit. But
oh, that's awesome.
That just gotta go again.
Oh yeah, definitely. Mitch, was there something that you learned that day that you weren't expecting? Aside from, like, the constant motion, the stuff that we always talked about, like maybe there's something in your casting or something that you were like, oh, I never thought about that this way.
No.
Okay. I guess we already talked about it all.
Honestly, it was the constant motion thing and how they'll follow right to the boat and they don't give a shit. That was
Yeah.
crazy. Most fish like, well, maybe sometimes you'll have those moments, but like no, they were pretty consistent. Like just so territorial, so aggressive, so predatory. You know, everything that people say about muskie's true, and they are super fun. So if you get a chance to do it, do it. Jordan, what would you give like one piece of advice for someone thinking about going muskie fishing for the first time?
Like I said, don't think it's as hard as it is. You know, the easy answer is to book a guide and get some knowledge on it. That's the easy answer. But yeah, you know, just get out there and do it. You know, or take that chance. You know, like I said, you know, in all seriousness, you know, get a guide a day. You know, it's not, they aren't as hard to obtain than you think. For the dozen days that I've been out there, probably already for the season, we've seen fish every day except for yesterday. Yesterday was the first day we didn't see a fish, and it was a bit of a shorter trip. It was a 6-hour trip with a father-son.
Okay.
They're kind of a regular of mine, and they can't quite do the full grinding, grilling days with the younger son. They got some small bass, which was great, but no follows, no looks, no nothing. But it's again one of those things where just put the time in, cover as much water as you can, spend as much time as you can, and just straight out just get out there and do it, because there's only one way to get it done, and that's to get out and fish. And yeah, you know, use the resources that are available too, right? You know, like the information that we talked on the podcast, whether it's YouTube, articles, whatnot, you know, find where your fish are, know where the bodies of water that hold them, and just get out and get after it.
And honestly, book Jordan for a day out there, because like you'll learn so much. I mean, holy shit, dude!
I always learn so much.
See fish for musky fishing. 80 to 90% of the days we're getting hooked up on musky. So for musky fishing, I mean, for those odds, you really just can't beat them anywhere else.
Yeah,
highly recommend a day on the water musky fishing with you, or something else. And if you're listening, look into it. And also, I love that you were stressing so early on that if you are going to do it by yourself, or just be like, I'll go make some casts on the river, prepare to encounter something and make sure that you don't kill the thing, because like these things are huge and they need that care and attention, like you said.
And it's even just yourself.
And yourself too, yeah. But it's just like, you know, if you're going to hook into a potentially 50-inch fish, make sure you have the resources to, you know, get it in and release it without, you or the fish dying, because it's not like catching a sunfish, you know. It's a serious thing catching a big muskie. So just be prepared for that. But yeah, thanks for an awesome day on the water. That was sick, and thanks for coming on and chatting with us again about muskie, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
For sure.
Yeah, man. Where can people, you know, why don't you plug? We'll put stuff to your links in the show notes, but where can people find you on Instagram? How can they book you? What's the rest of your season looking like?
Yeah, so a Perfect Drift Guide, or a Perfect Drift Guide Company is the name. aperfectdrift.com is the website. OntarioGuide@gmail is the email, and that's usually how people are getting a hold of me there, is through email. Phone also works well too. Everything should be on the website there, perfectdrift.com.
Perfect.
But yeah, email is usually best. If you search up a Perfect Drift Guide Company on Instagram, it should come up there as well. And you can check out all the photos that we're posting, the fish that we're getting. We don't post everything, but
right, of course.
Usually some recaps there when the season's kind of done and stuff like that. But
and then
we got good content on there.
And then you still have On the Fly Rod if people want to follow you there.
Yeah, it's just kind of become like a personal
account
page for me now too. Yeah, so it's like if I do any trips or anything like that, it's kind of where I kind of just post some of that stuff and whatnot. But yeah,
I like it. All right, there you go. Jordan Pockett is his name. Musky fishing is his game. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
What the fuck?
That's good.
That's
awesome.
And that's how you fly fish for muskie.
And there it was.
Yes, indeed. Big flies, big fish, big prize.
And
I'm rhyming today.
You've got an interesting little aura today. What's your aura today?
My aura today is saucy.
Oh, you are saucy. Oh, well.
Saucy.
You boys are in for a real treat.
Yeah?
So I was a saucier down in San Antone.
What?
Tropic Thunder.
Classic film.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, hey, so we've met a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we've met a lot of great people in this province and around the world. And Jordan is one of those people.
Oh,
he's
for sure.
just like, every time you get to fish with him, whether like, you know, he's very consciously taking you out, or if we just Some days you're just on the river and you get a text being like, "Hey, I just finished my day. I heard you guys are out."
Yeah.
And I always learn something from him, even in those like 5 minutes. He just knows so much for
Very
for a
passionate.
guy who's so young.
Extremely passionate angler. Like I know like a handful of people that like fishing to that degree, you know. Of course we all love fishing. We're all very passionate about it, but there's like people that are like it's all he does, you know, like Jordan. And it's fun because he's so into it. He's also just such a down to earth dude and he's fun to hang out with. Like I love having beers like we did back in the spring, you know, when he came
Oh,
to town for
God.
events and stuff.
So much fun to hang out with. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's just like, he's cool because he's, you know, any Ontario angler is going to be a multi-species person, you know?
Yep.
I think you just have to be if you want to make a living. But it's cool. Like, he's such a dialed guy, you know,
Yeah.
in steelhead and of course those brown, you know, like,
Yeah.
my God, he knows so much about brown trout. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But then it's like, it's cool that he's getting into, you know, like I think he said he's been consciously maybe going after them for a while, but guiding for them for, you know, feeling comfortable enough to guide for them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
A lot of information. That was a very info-packed.
It's info-packed. An info-packed hour of Musky chat.
Yeah, more like info fly.
What?
That was awful.
Hopefully you guys like took something away from that, and if you are getting into musky fishing or have been for a long time, you enjoyed it. But I think yeah, it's worth doing for sure. I mean, every angler wants to go catch giant predatory freshwater fish at some point in their fishing career, so why not now?
Why not?
You've got September. Jordan was saying that's a great time to go. Go check it out.
And you know what? Ontario's a very musky place. Like there's,
yeah, it is.
Like, you know, if you even look at some of our conventional tackle,
Yep.
you know, comrades out there, like you've got the Ugly Pike podcast, you know, you've got you know, the Average Ontario podcast. They're doing shows about musky.
Yeah.
You have the Musky Odyssey, which is a musky based. I love the name, the Musky. It's a musky trade show that happens every year in Ontario.
Oh, okay, I thought it was just a musky podcast.
No, I mean that would be a really cool name for a
Musky Odyssey.
Well, the Ugly Pike podcast is pretty much a musky podcast.
Right.
Yeah. We discuss all things related to the lifestyle of hunting the apex predator, the muskellunge.
Wow.
And they've been around for forever too, and like that's really cool. And I just think, yeah, like you said, growing up in Ottawa, like, you know, you'd even see muskie in like the Rideau Canal.
They were like not necessarily common bycatch, but they were like I've had many bycatches of muskie before, and I didn't catch them because I was never using the right gear. They always broke off my line and came out of nowhere, or ate the fish that was on my loop, like my line. Like, yeah, I've had many encounters with them throughout my life.
They evoke such a, yeah, I don't know, they're like I don't know, they have this like ethereal quality to them.
Elusive, mysterious, interesting,
oddly selective.
Yeah, they're very cool. And when I saw it, the image burned into my brain is like when you see a muskie from the top down, next to the boat, and the way its like head is shaped and its eyes are, and the boniness of its jaw, and like it's very devilish, you know, it's
sinister.
Like they're just so sinister. Tough, and like, you know, they're just surviving. They're not actually like
mean.
Yeah, not like, you know, werewolves or something, like some like you know,
yes, that
scary mythical creature. They're just like animals, but they're like just very apex, you know. So it's sick. Go fish for them or don't. But if you do, hey, book Jordan. Links in the show notes. What else we got going on? I mean, I wish we, like, you know, we're doing this early, recording this early because we're on a bunch of back-to-back Northern Ontario trips. It'd be cool to talk about those now, but stay tuned in the upcoming shows.
Well, we're going to be doing shows about those for sure.
Of course. But yeah, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I hope, those trips went well. And I'm pretty sure they did. And I'm sure we ate some awesome road trip food and some awesome other food, and caught, you know, learned something about pike fishing we didn't know.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I think I don't really have, you know, this comes out on August 15th. I will have gotten off 2 weeks of fishing, you 1 week of fishing. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I would still like to, I want to keep exploring a little bit more on the flat water. Obviously with my kayak, hopefully get out to your cottage neck of the woods. Maybe not at your cottage, but somewhere around there we can have some fun. Because, you know, bass is probably going to wrap up in a couple weeks, and
Yep.
we'll try and ride out see if we can get some sort of. I would really like to, get hopefully the temps drop and the river levels are decent enough to have a good
Time.
Well, just a good time, like brown trout fishing. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
Trout
yeah,
fishing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
I
yeah,
definitely am
like
looking
hopefully
forward
like
to
we get a
and
good
to see the
resident.
trout.
Like I can get a few days in September.
Yeah.
Where I can enjoy some resident trout fishing.
Well, we want to go to Pennsylvania. We got to do a trip there.
That would be cool. Yeah, a little weekender thing. Mm-hmm.
But then we're coming up, starting to come up to the time of year where the steelheads start becoming a topic of conversation. Maybe some LRBs, Lake Run Browns, go on back up to upstate.
I have to do that. It's got to
Let's
be
do
an
it this
annual
year.
thing. I'm
Let's do it
sorry.
this fall.
It's just like too much fun.
Yeah, let's go.
It's just absolutely way too
I'm
much
excited
fun.
for migratory season. It's I'm looking forward to it. Cooler temps outside, people putting pumpkins out. Steelheader in the rivers. I got my plaid on, drinking a little chestnut latte. Maybe got a little
chestnut. What happened to the
fall
PSL,
cigar.
brother?
Yeah, that's what I meant. PSL. Actually, don't.
No, I thought maybe you changed you changed the game.
I actually like chestnut better. Chestnut praline. But
That's
they
a
make
flavor?
it too sweet now. I don't know, man. Like fall lattes, it's just like something about that.
No,
so
I know.
cozy and nice.
I know.
And then just steely.
Why don't we make our own syrup?
Rainy days, and we could. It's great. Fall's the best. I love it, and so it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, you're a fall guy for sure.
Yeah, and we'll do some steely, but late season trout for sure. I'm really excited.
Well, I'm excited to for sure. Like, I mean,
And a lot of
it's
warm
ever since getting the raft, like it's really opens up your options when it comes to access to steelhead. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I know there's some swinging water on the. Well, I won't say where, but there's some swinging water on a river that
on the Rahin.
on the that we normally fish with that we normally walk and wade. So I definitely want to get there with the boat, and then we can hop out and swing away.
I'm with you.
'Cause that'll be cool.
Yeah. Well, if everyone listening to this can go and give us a good rating on Spotify or Apple or follow us on YouTube, that'd be awesome. It goes a long way.
Yep, and feedback is great. Good, bad, or ugly. Don't really care. It's just nice to hear from you guys.
No, just good. Just don't. I don't need to hear any bad shit.
Well, not bad. Like
I don't even need constructive anymore. Just send us good messages only. Like, yeah, this is the best. That's all we need to hear. And thanks for listening. That's it for me, Mitch. Aldo.
Yeah, that's it for me too.
Take care.
Come the air.